The space station hung in the darkness like a small metal flower. Ships came and went, carrying goods and people from different worlds. Dr. Sarah Chen stepped off her transport ship and looked around. The station was busy. Aliens of all kinds walked past her. Some had fur, some had scales, and some looked like walking trees. Sarah was a doctor who worked with machines and brains. She came to the station to deliver special medical equipment. Her job was simple, but she always stayed a few extra days to see the station. She liked meeting aliens and learning about their worlds. On her third day, Sarah walked near the docking bay. She saw a small figure sitting against a wall. It was a young alien girl. Her skin shimmered with soft colors like oil on water. Her eyes were large but covered with a white cloud. She held a small cup in her delicate hands. Sarah stopped. The girl was blind. She could tell by the way the child's head turned. Listening to footsteps instead of looking, Sarah watched as people walked past the girl without stopping. Some dropped coins in her cup. Most ignored her completely. Sarah walked closer. The girl's head turned toward her footsteps. Sarah knelt down and put some coins in the cup. The girl smiled. "Thank you," the girl said in broken human language. Her voice was soft like wind through grass. "What is your name?" Sarah asked. "Ziara," the girl replied. Sarah learned that Ziara was from a species called the Velkari. They were a graceful people who could speak to each other with their minds. Sarah came back to see Ziara every day. She brought food and asked questions. Ziara's human words got better with practice. Through their talks, Sarah learned that the Velkari people believed blindness was sacred. They called blind children like Ziara the chosen by the void. These children were special in their culture. They were kept separate from others and raised to become priests and prophets. "But why are you here alone?" Sarah asked one day. Ziara's face became sad. She explained that she ran away. The temple was cold and lonely. The priest told her she was special, but she felt like a prisoner. She wanted to see the world, but all she had was darkness. So she left, even though it was forbidden. Sarah felt angry and sad. Here was a child who could be helped, but her people said no. They believed her blindness was a gift from their god. To cure it would be an insult to the void. "Do you want to see?" Sarah asked carefully. Ziara's breath caught. Her clouded eyes seemed to look right at Sarah, even though she could not see. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Yes, more than anything." That night Sarah could not sleep. She kept thinking about Ziara. Her human mind could not accept that a child should stay blind, just because of old beliefs. Sarah knew about the Velkari brain. She had studied many alien species. She thought she could help, but should she? This was not her culture. These were not her people. Who was she to decide what was right? Sarah thought about Ziara sitting in the dark, listening to a world she would never see. She thought about the girl's quiet voice saying yes. She thought about how much humans valued choice and freedom. She made her decision. The next morning, Sarah went to her workshop on the station. She started working on something new. It would be a visor, a device that could help Ziara see. Sarah worked with computer programs and brain scans she bought from other doctors. The Velkari brain was different from a human brain, but not so different that she could not help. Days turned into weeks. Sarah barely left her workshop. She drank too much coffee and forgot to eat. But slowly the visor took shape. It was beautiful. The device looked like a thin piece of crystal that would rest across Ziara's eyes. Inside were tiny machines smaller than dust. The visor would read the world around it. Then it would send signals directly into the brain, past the damaged eyes. If Sarah did everything right, Ziara would see. One evening, Sarah found Ziara in their usual meeting place, an empty storage room where no one would see them. "I made something for you," Sarah said. Her hand shook a little as she held out the visor. Ziara reached out and touched it. Her fingers traced the smooth crystal. "What is it?" she asked. "Something that might help you see," Sarah answered. "But you must choose. Your people will be angry if they find out. I do not know what will happen. You can say no and I will understand." Ziara was quiet for a long time. Sarah could hear her breathing, fast and nervous. Finally, the girl nodded. "I choose yes. I want to see." Sarah helped Ziara put on the visor. It fit perfectly across her face. Sarah pressed a small button on the side. The device hummed softly. Lights flickered inside the crystal. "Now," Sarah said quietly, "open your eyes." At first, nothing happened. Ziara stood very still. Then she made a sound, something between a gasp and a cry. Her hands flew to the visor, but not to remove it. She was touching it in wonder. "I can see," Ziara whispered. "I can see colors. I can see you. I can see everything." Tears ran down both their faces. Sarah watched as Ziara looked around the room, seeing it for the first time. The girl looked at the walls, the ceiling, her own hands. She stared at Sarah's face with wide, seeing eyes. "Is this what the world looks like?" Ziara asked. "It is so beautiful, so much more than I imagined." For a week they met in secret. Sarah made small adjustments to the visor to make it work better. Ziara learned to understand what she was seeing. She wanted to see everything. The stars outside the windows, the ships coming and going, the faces of all the different aliens. Sarah noticed something interesting. With the visor, Ziara's mental powers seemed stronger, not weaker. She could speak into Sarah's mind more clearly now. The old Velkari belief was wrong. Sight did not take away their gifts, but secrets do not stay hidden forever. One day, Ziara walked through the market wearing her visor. She was looking at beautiful things for sale, so focused on the colors that she forgot to be careful. She walked past a group of Velkari merchants. One of them, an old male with dark blue skin, stopped and stared. "Child," he said sharply, "how are you walking without your stick? How do you see the goods?" Ziara froze. Other Velkari turned to look. They saw the visor. They saw her eyes, no longer clouded but clear behind the crystal device. One of them screamed, "Abomination! The Chosen has been corrupted." Within an hour, the Velkari priests arrived. At their head was a tall figure in black robes. Elder Talvin. His face was ancient and hard like stone. He looked at Ziara with eyes full of horror and rage. "Who did this?" he demanded. "Who dared to corrupt a Chosen of the Void?" Ziara said nothing, but she did not need to. The crowd had seen her with Sarah before. The merchants pointed. The priests turned their terrible gaze toward the human doctor. Sarah stood in the crowd, watching her small act of kindness turn into something she could not control. The priests seized Ziara. They took the visor, but they did not destroy it. Not yet. They wanted to examine it. They wanted to understand this evil. Elder Talvin looked at Sarah across the crowd. "You will answer for this crime, human. You have touched what is sacred. You have disturbed the will of the void." Sarah tried to reach Ziara, but the crowd blocked her way. She watched helplessly as they took the girl away. Ziara looked back once, her newly seeing eyes full of fear. Sarah stood alone in the market. All around her, people whispered and stared. She had wanted to help one child. Now she had started something much bigger than herself. Something she could not stop. The Velkari priest called it. The station authorities came for Sarah the next morning. They were polite but firm. She had to appear before the Velkari Council. Station law said they must respect alien customs on matters of religion and culture. Sarah knew she was in trouble. The council chamber was dark and cold. Velkari priests sat in a circle around the room. Their faces were hard to read. In the center, Ziara knelt on the floor. The visor was gone. Her eyes were clouded again, unable to see. Sarah's heart broke at the sight. Elder Talvin stood before them. He held the visor in his hands, looking at it with disgust. "This device," he said, "is an insult to the eternal void. For thousands of years, our people have honored those marked by blindness. They are chosen. They are sacred. This human has defiled that sacred tradition." Sarah was allowed to speak. She stood and faced the council. "I meant no insult," she said. "I saw a child who wanted to see. Where I come from, we believe every person has the right to choose their own path." Ziara chose to use the visor. "I only gave her the choice." "Choice?" Elder Talvin's voice was sharp as broken glass. "The void does not give choices. The void gives purpose. Those born without sight are meant to see the truth beyond the physical world. They become our spiritual guides, our prophets, our connection to the divine." Sarah took a deep breath. "With respect, Elder, I studied Ziara's brain patterns. Her telepathic abilities grew stronger when she could see, not weaker. Your belief that blindness is necessary for mental power is not supported by evidence." Angry voices filled the chamber. The priests were outraged. How dare this human question their sacred texts? How dare she claim to know better than generations of wisdom? The station's human ambassador tried to mediate. "Perhaps we can find a compromise," she suggested. Dr. Chen made a mistake in not consulting Velkari authorities first. But the technology itself might have value. Could there not be discussion? There is nothing to discuss, Elder Talvin declared. According to ancient law, anyone who attempts to cure the void chosen commits heresy. The punishment for heresy is death, for the child and for the one who corrupted her. Sarah felt cold fear run through her body. You would kill a child for wanting to see? She made a choice, Talvin said, throwing Sarah's own words back at her. She chose to reject the gift of the void. There are consequences for such choices. Days of arguments followed. The station authorities tried to protect Sarah and Ziara. Human diplomatic law said they could not hand over a human citizen for execution, based on religious law. But they had no authority over Ziara. She was Velkari. She belonged to her people. During this time, Sarah learned more about Velkari history. She dug through old records and medical files. What she found changed everything. The Velkari homeworld had strange radiation. Thousands of years ago, this radiation damaged the eyes of many Velkari children. More and more babies were born blind. At first it was seen as a terrible curse. But then, the culture adapted. They made blindness into something sacred. If they could not fix it, they would honor it instead. Over time, people forgot the truth. They forgot that blindness came from radiation, not from divine choice. The sacred story became the only story. Anyone who questioned it was punished. The priests built their power on this belief. They controlled the void chosen, interpreting their visions, using them to maintain authority. Sarah brought this evidence to the council. Your sacred blindness is not a gift from God, she said. It is a genetic condition caused by environmental damage. Your ancestors could not cure it, so they made it holy. But that does not mean it should stay that way forever. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some priests shouted that Sarah was lying. Others looked uncertain. The evidence was clear, but accepting it meant their entire belief system was built on a mistake. Elder Talvin's face turned dark with rage. Even if your words were true, it changes nothing. Our culture has followed this path for millennia. To change now would destroy us. Better to preserve our traditions than to embrace chaos. But Sarah's evidence had reached beyond the council chamber. News spread through the station's Velkari population. Young Velkari started asking questions. Why should the blind be forced into temples? Why could they not choose for themselves? A group of blind Velkari youths came forward. They wanted the Visor technology. They wanted to see. The priests tried to stop them, but the youths argued loudly. You say we are chosen, one young male said. But we never chose this. We were born into it. Where is our choice? The conflict grew larger. It was no longer just about Sarah and Ziara. It became a fight about freedom and tradition, about who had the right to decide what was sacred. One night something happened that no one expected. A group of young Velkari rebels broke into the room where the Visor was kept. They stole it. They took it to a Velkari engineer who studied human technology. Within days they had made copies. The rebels distributed the Visors to blind Velkari who wanted them. Suddenly, dozens of Void Chosen could see. They walked through the station with wonder on their faces, looking at stars and people in colors for the first time. The priests declared this an act of war. War against the Void itself. They sent urgent messages to the Velkari homeworld. The situation was out of control. The sacred order was collapsing. Sarah watched in horror as her simple gift turned into a cultural crisis. She had wanted to help one child. Now her technology was spreading like wildfire through Velkari space. She heard reports from other stations, other worlds. Blind Velkari everywhere were demanding the Visors. The priesthood was losing control. Elder Talvin came to see Sarah in her quarters. He looked older now, tired. Do you see what you have done? He asked quietly. You have broken something that can never be repaired. My people are turning against each other. Families are divided, the faithful against the rebels. I never wanted this, Sarah said. I just wanted to help Ziara. Intentions do not matter, Talvin replied. Only consequences. You have unleashed something you cannot control. The homeworld is sending ships. They will restore order by any means necessary. What about Ziara? Sarah asked. Will they execute her? Talvin's expression softened slightly. The child is a symbol now. Both sides claim her. The traditionalists want to punish her as a warning. The rebels want to free her as a hero. Her fate will determine much. That night, Sarah could not sleep. She kept thinking about all the Velkari who now fought because of her actions. The technology was supposed to bring freedom. Instead, it brought conflict. She thought about what the human ambassador had said earlier. Sometimes, the woman had told her, the most dangerous thing you can give people is freedom. Not because freedom is bad, but because taking away someone's chains means they have to learn to walk on their own. That transition is always painful. The next week, Velkari military ships arrived at the station. They demanded the return of all stolen technology. They demanded the arrest of the rebels. They demanded that Sarah be handed over to face Velkari justice. The station refused. This created a standoff. Velkari ships surrounded the station. No one could leave. No one could enter. Inside, tensions rose. Velkari traditionalists and rebels clashed in the corridors. Station security tried to keep the peace, but they were overwhelmed. Sarah met with the rebel leaders. They were young, passionate, angry. They saw her as a hero who brought them liberation. But Sarah did not feel like a hero. She felt like someone who had started a fire without knowing how big it would grow. "What do you want?" she asked them. "We want the right to choose," their leader said. She was a young female named Kesra. She wore one of the copied visors. "We want blind Velkari to decide for themselves. Stay blind if they wish. Use the visor if they want. The priest should not decide for us." "And what about your culture?" Sarah asked. "What about the temples, the traditions, the sacred texts?" Kesra's expression hardened. "Our culture was built on a lie. You proved that. Now we must build something new, something based on truth instead of ancient fear." Sarah understood their anger, but she also understood Elder Talvin's fear. Change was terrifying, especially when it meant admitting your entire life was based on something false. Late one night, Sarah received a secret message. It was from Ziara. The girl had managed to hide a communication device. Her message was short but desperate. "They are going to execute me tomorrow," Ziara wrote. "The priests say my death will end the rebellion. Please, Sarah, help me." Sarah's blood ran cold. She showed the message to the rebels. They immediately began planning a rescue. Sarah wanted to help, but she also knew that breaking Ziara out would make everything worse. It would turn this into an open war. But she could not let Ziara die. Not because of a choice Sarah herself had offered. The rescue happened at dawn. Sarah did not participate directly, but she helped plan it. The rebels knew the Velkari ship where Ziara was held. They knew the guard schedules. They knew the weak points in security. It should have been quiet. A quick extraction. In and out before anyone noticed. But something went wrong. The guards were ready. Someone had betrayed the plan. Fighting broke out in the docking bay. Energy weapons flashed in the dark. Sarah watched from a viewing port, her heart pounding. She saw rebels and traditionalist guards clash. She saw Velkari fighting their own people. In the chaos, Ziara escaped. The rebels brought her to safety in the station's lower levels. But the damage was done. 3 Velkari were dead. Dozens more were injured. What started as a debate about tradition had become violent. The Velkari military ship surrounding the station responded with force. They blocked all communications. They threatened to storm the station if the rebels did not surrender immediately. Inside the station, panic spread. Human residents demanded protection. Other alien species called their governments for help. The station administrator declared a state of emergency. Sarah found Ziara hiding in a maintenance corridor. The girl was terrified but alive. She still had no visor. Her eyes were clouded and blind again. "I am sorry," Ziara whispered when she heard Sarah's voice. "People died because of me, because I wanted to see." "No," Sarah said firmly. "People died because of fear and hate. Not because of you. You did nothing wrong." But even as she said it, Sarah wondered if that was true. She had given Ziara the choice to see, but she had not thought about what that choice would cost. She had not prepared for the consequences. News from the Velkari homeworld made everything worse. The conflict had spread there too. Cities were divided. Families turned against each other. Blind Velkari demanded visors. Conservative priests organized to stop them. Protests became riots. Riots became violence. Sarah received reports that shocked her. Some factories that manufactured the copied visors had been burned down. Velkari who wore visors were attacked in the streets. Temples were vandalized by angry rebels. The War of Sight, people called it. Not a war with armies and weapons, though there was violence. It was a war of ideas, a war between those who believed blindness was sacred and those who believed in the right to choose. Sarah tried to stop it. She made public statements saying the technology should be used carefully. She argued for compromise and discussion, but her words were lost in the noise. Both sides used her as a symbol. The rebels called her a liberator. The traditionalists called her a demon. Elder Talvin appeared on Velkari broadcasts. His face was tired and sad. "My people," he said, "we stand at a crossroads. We can cling to our ancient ways or we can surrender to chaos. I believe our traditions exist for a reason. They give us identity. They give us purpose. Without them, what are we?" His words moved many traditionalists, but the rebels were not convinced. Kesra, the rebel leader, made her own broadcast. "Our traditions were built on suffering," she said. "They were built on forcing blind children into temples against their will. That is not sacred. That is cruelty disguised as religion." The divide grew deeper every day. Sarah felt helpless. She was a scientist, not a politician or a spiritual leader. She did not know how to heal a broken culture. One night she sat with Ziara in a safe house. The girl was quiet, withdrawn. The joy of seeing had been replaced with guilt and fear. "Tell me honestly," Sarah said. "Do you regret it? Regret asking for the visor?" Ziara thought for a long time before answering. "I do not regret seeing," she finally said. "The world is beautiful, more beautiful than I imagined. But I regret the pain it caused. I wish there was a way to have one without the other." Sarah understood. That was the heart of the problem. Change always hurt, even good change, even necessary change. The question was whether the pain was worth it. Then something happened that changed everything. A journalist, a human named Marcus Webb, started investigating Velkari history. He was thorough and careful. He found old genetic records. He found medical files that were thousands of years old. What he discovered was explosive. The Velkari priesthood had known the truth. They had always known that blindness came from radiation damage, not divine selection. Ancient priests had discovered this centuries ago, but they chose to hide it. More shocking was what else Webb found. The priesthood had been using genetic manipulation for generations. They had been deliberately increasing the rate of blindness in the population. They used subtle methods hidden in medical treatments. The blind population grew, which meant the priesthood's power grew. Webb published his findings. The evidence was undeniable. The priesthood had been creating the very suffering they claimed to revere. They had manufactured sacred blindness to maintain their control over society. The revelation shook Velkari space like an earthquake. Even many traditionalists were horrified. They had believed their faith was pure and true. Now they learned it was built on lies and manipulation. Protests erupted on the homeworld, not just from rebels now, but from ordinary Velkari who felt betrayed. They surrounded temples. They demanded answers from priests who had no answers to give. Elder Talvin himself seemed broken by the news. He appeared before the council, his face ashen. "I did not know," he said quietly. I truly believed we were serving the void. But we were only serving our own power. Some priests tried to deny the evidence. They called it human propaganda. But too many Velkari had seen the genetic records. Too many had verified the truth. The denials rang hollow. The priesthood collapsed almost overnight. Temples stood empty. The great religious structures that had dominated Velkari society for millennia lost their authority. Some priests fled. Others renounced their vows. A few, including Talvin, stayed to face the consequences. Sarah watched all this unfold with mixed feelings. The truth had come out, which was good. But the destruction it caused was massive. An entire civilization's foundation had been shattered. She met with Talvin one last time. The old priest was in custody awaiting trial. He looked small now, not the imposing figure he had been. "You were right," he said to Sarah. "But I wonder if you understand the cost of being right. My people have nothing now. No faith, no structure, no purpose. We are lost." "You will find a new purpose," Sarah said. "One based on truth instead of lies." "Perhaps," Talvin replied. "Or perhaps we will simply fall apart. Not all societies survive such trauma. You should have considered that before you began this." His words haunted Sarah. She had thought she was helping. She had thought giving people choice was always right. But what if choice came too fast? What if people were not ready for it? The Velkari homeworld descended into chaos. With no priesthood to guide them, different factions competed for power. The rebels wanted democracy. The old guard wanted to restore order, any order. Common citizens just wanted the fighting to stop. Violence increased. Not just protest now, but real fighting. Velkari ships clashed in orbit. Cities burned. Sarah's simple visor had become the spark that ignited civil war. And at the center of it all was a question no one could answer. Now that the old ways were destroyed, what would replace them? Who would decide the future of the Velkari people? Sarah knew she had to act. She could not undo what she had started. But maybe, just maybe, she could help finish it in a way that minimized the damage. She had to try. Sarah knew what she had to do. She had to go to the Velkari homeworld. She had to see the damage with her own eyes. And she had to offer what help she could, even if people hated her for starting this. The journey was dangerous. Velkari space was now a battlefield. Different factions controlled different regions. Some ships attacked anything that moved. Others were trying to maintain peace. Sarah traveled with Ziara and a small group of rebels. Kesra came too. They managed to reach the homeworld, landing in a spaceport controlled by moderate forces who wanted dialogue. The planet was beautiful. Crystal cities rose from green valleys, but the beauty was scarred by conflict. Buildings were damaged. Streets were empty. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Sarah saw Velkari citizens with and without visors living in separate districts. They refused to mix. Former friends had become enemies. Families were torn apart by which side they chose. She met with different faction leaders, traditionalists who wanted to rebuild the old ways, reformers who wanted slow, careful change, radicals who wanted to destroy everything and start over. Each group blamed the others for the violence. "You did this," a traditionalist leader told Sarah. His name was Venkar, and he had lost his son in the fighting. "You brought chaos to our peaceful world. You destroyed our way of life," Sarah did not argue. What could she say? He was right. She had started this. But she also met Velkari who thanked her. Blind citizens who now wore visors and saw their children's faces for the first time. People who said they finally felt free. The truth was complex. Some Velkari benefited from the change. Others suffered terribly from it. Both things were real. Sarah proposed a meeting. A gathering of all factions to talk instead of fight. At first, no one wanted to attend. The hate ran too deep. But slowly, with help from other species and diplomats, she convinced them. The meeting took place in an ancient amphitheater. Thousands of Velkari gathered, sighted and blind, young and old. Angry voices filled the space. Sarah stood before them. She felt small and afraid. These were not her people. This was not her world. But she had caused this, so she had to speak. "I am sorry," she began. "I came to your station wanting to help one child. I did not understand what I would unleash. I should have been more careful. I should have thought about the consequences." Some voices shouted agreement. Others told her to be silent. Sarah continued, "But I cannot undo what happened. None of us can. The truth is out. Your priesthood lied to you for generations. They created suffering to maintain power. That is not my fault. That is theirs. The question now is not who to blame," Sarah said. "The question is what comes next. You can keep fighting. You can destroy each other. Or you can find a new way forward together." Venkar stood up. "And what way is that, human? Our culture is in ruins. Our traditions are lies. What do we have left?" Before Sarah could answer, Ziara stepped forward. The young girl's voice was small but clear. "We have choice," she said. "That is what we have left. The right to decide for ourselves." The crowd turned to look at her. Ziara, who had started everything. The first void chosen to wear a visor. She looked different now. Older, marked by suffering but not broken by it. "I was born blind," Ziara continued. "The priest told me it was sacred. They told me I was chosen. But I never felt chosen. I felt trapped. When Dr. Chen gave me the visor, I finally had a choice. To see or not to see. That choice changed my life." She paused, looking around at the crowd. "Some of you think blindness is still sacred. That is your right. Some of you want to see. That is also your right. The problem was never the choice itself. The problem was forcing everyone to believe the same thing." An old Velkari woman stood. She was blind without a visor. "But child," she said gently, "if blindness is not sacred, what meaning does it have? I have been blind all my life. I was taught it made me special. If that is a lie, then what am I?" Ciara walked to the woman. "You are still special," she said. "Not because you are blind, but because of who you are. Your wisdom, your kindness, your strength. Those things are real. Blindness does not make you special, but it also does not make you less." The woman's face softened. Tears ran down her cheeks. Around the amphitheater, Sarah saw other faces changing too. People were listening. Really listening, Kesra spoke next. "We do not want to destroy all traditions," she said. "We want to keep what is good and change what is harmful. Velkari culture has many beautiful things. Our art, our music, our way of speaking mind to mind. Those things are worth preserving. But forcing children into temples is not. Lying about genetic conditions is not." A middle-aged Velkari male stood. "My daughter chose to wear a visor," he said. "My wife said it was a sin. We have not spoken in months. How do we heal that divide?" No one had an easy answer. The hurt was too deep, the wounds too fresh, but people kept talking. Slowly, painfully, they started to listen to each other instead of just shouting. Elder Talvin was brought from custody to speak. He was old and tired, but he stood straight. "I spent my life serving what I thought was sacred," he said. "I learned it was a lie. That pain is mine to bear. But I understand now that faith does not require blindness. True faith requires humility, the willingness to admit when we are wrong." He turned to the crowd. "I apologize to all those harmed by the priesthood's lies. I cannot fix the past, but I can help build a better future. One where blind and sighted Velkari live together, respecting each other's choices." The meeting went on for hours. Slowly, a plan emerged. The Velkari would create a new government, a council with representatives from different groups, blind and sighted, young and old, traditional and progressive. The visor technology would be freely available but not mandatory. Each Velkari could choose for themselves. Temples could remain for those who wanted them, but no one would be forced to join. Most importantly, they would investigate the genetic manipulation. They would stop the priesthood's practices. They would help heal those affected by centuries of artificial blindness. It was not perfect. Many details needed work. Not everyone agreed. Some extremists on both sides refused to accept compromise. But it was a start, a first step toward healing. After the meeting, Sarah walked through the city with Ziara. The fighting had stopped, at least for now. People watched them but did not attack. "Do you think it will work?" Ziara asked. "Do you think we can really live together? Blind and sighted?" "I do not know," Sarah said honestly. "Change is hard. Some people will never accept it. But you gave them a chance. You showed them that understanding is possible." They stood on a hillside overlooking the crystal city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors Ziara had never seen before she got her visor. "Sometimes I take off the visor," Ziara admitted, "just to remember what it was like, to honor that part of myself. Blindness was not all bad. It taught me to listen better, to feel more deeply." Sarah smiled. "That is wisdom. You do not have to reject all of your past to embrace your future." In the weeks that followed, the new council began its work. It was messy and difficult. There were setbacks. Some violence continued, but slowly order returned. Not the old order based on lies, but a new order based on choice and truth. Sarah stayed to help. She worked with Velkari scientists to improve the visor technology. They made it more comfortable, more reliable. They also developed other tools for blind Velkari who chose not to use visors. Better audio systems. Enhanced telepathic amplifiers. Many ways to navigate the world. She also helped establish something new. A center for cultural transition. A place where Velkari could talk about their feelings, their fears, their hopes. A place where blind and sighted could meet safely and learn to understand each other. The work was hard. Sarah made many mistakes, but she learned from them. She learned to listen more and assume less. She learned that helping people meant respecting their pace, their culture, their autonomy. And slowly, painfully, the Velkari began to heal. Not back to what they were, but forward to something new. Something that honored both tradition and progress. Something built on choice rather than control. 5 years passed. 5 years of slow, painful progress. The Velkari homeworld looked different now. Not completely transformed, but healing. Crystal City still stood, but with new purposes. The old temples had been converted. Some became schools. Others became community centers where blind and sighted Velkari could meet. A few remained as places of worship, but voluntary worship. No one was forced to attend. No one was forced to believe. Sarah walked through the capital city. She had stayed these 5 years, helping where she could. Her hair had more gray now. Her face showed the weight of what she had experienced. She passed Velkari on the street. Some wore visors. Some did not. Some used advanced walking sticks with sensors. Others relied on their natural telepathic abilities to navigate. Many different choices, all equally respected. The transition had not been easy. There were still tensions. Some communities remained divided. A few extremist groups on both sides continued to cause trouble. But the large-scale violence had stopped. People were learning to live together. Sarah visited a memorial built in the city center. It honored those who died in the War of Sight. Hundreds of names were carved in stone, traditionalists and rebels both. The memorial's inscription read, "We remember the cost of change. We honor those lost. We work for a future where such division never happens again." Someone stood beside her at the memorial. It was Venkar, the father who had lost his son. Sarah had spoken with him many times over the years. Their relationship had been difficult at first. He blamed her, and she understood why. "My daughter came to visit yesterday," Venkar said quietly, the one who chose the visor. "We had not spoken in 3 years." Sarah waited. She had learned to listen. "She showed me her children," Venkar continued. "My grandchildren. I could feel them with my mind, but she described what they looked like. Their colors, their eyes. She was so happy to share that with me, and I realized that her happiness does not diminish my way of life. We can both exist, both be valid." He turned to Sarah. "I still grieve my son. I still think the change came too fast, too violently. But I cannot blame you forever. You gave us a choice. What we did with that choice was our own responsibility." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I am sorry for the pain this caused. I wish it could have happened differently." "Perhaps," Venkar said, "but perhaps not. Sometimes pain is necessary for growth. I hate that truth, but I cannot deny it." Later that day, Sarah attended a ceremony at the new government building. The Velkari Council was celebrating 5 years of the new way, as they called it. Representatives from across Velkari space had gathered. The council was diverse. Some members were blind, some sighted. Some were former priests who had reformed. Others were young rebels turned politicians. They did not always agree, but they had learned to work together. Ziara was there. She had grown into a young woman, confident and strong. She served as an ambassador for the new government. Her unique perspective, having experienced both blindness and sight, made her invaluable in bridging different communities. "Dr. Chen," the council leader said, calling Sarah to the stage, "you came to us 5 years ago bearing a gift that became a curse, then a blessing, then simply a tool. You stayed when you could have left. You helped when we pushed you away. You learned when we taught you. Today we honor you." Sarah stepped onto the stage, feeling uncomfortable with the attention. The council leader continued, "You showed us that change, while painful, is not our enemy. You showed us that preserving tradition and embracing progress are not opposites. They can work together." The council presented Sarah with an award, a crystal sculpture showing 2 hands reaching toward each other, one holding a visor, one holding a traditional walking stick. Both equal, both respected. When Sarah spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I do not deserve this honor. I made mistakes. I moved too quickly without understanding. I caused pain that I can never fully repair." She looked out at the crowd. "But you, the Velkari people, you did something remarkable. You took that pain and transformed it. You could have destroyed yourselves. Instead, you built something new. You showed that truth and tradition can coexist when both are chosen freely, rather than imposed forcefully." After the ceremony, Sarah walked with Ziara through a garden. The young Velkari woman wore her visor today, though Sarah knew she sometimes went without it. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked. "Everything that happened?" Ziara considered the question carefully. "I regret the violence. I regret the deaths. I regret the families torn apart. But I do not regret having a choice. And I do not regret that now other Velkari have that same choice." She smiled. "Besides, because of what happened, we discovered so much. We learned that sight does not diminish our telepathy. We learned that blindness can be honored without being mandatory. We learned that our culture is stronger than we thought, strong enough to change and still remain Velkari." Sarah nodded. She had learned things too. She had learned that helping others meant respecting their pace and their culture. She had learned that good intentions were not enough without wisdom and humility. She had learned that truth could be both freeing and destructive, and that managing that contradiction required patience and care. The human government wanted Sarah to return. They wanted her to share what she learned. Other species faced similar dilemmas. Old traditions conflicting with new technologies. Belief systems challenged by scientific evidence. Sarah had become an expert in navigating these transitions. "I am going to start a foundation," Sarah told Ziara, "to help other societies manage technological and cultural transitions. Not to impose change, but to guide it. To help people make informed choices without destroying what they value." "That is good," Ziara said. "You will save others from learning these lessons the hard way." Before Sarah left the Velkari homeworld, she visited Elder Talivan one last time. The old priest had been released from custody. He now taught at one of the new schools, helping young Velkari understand their history, both the truth and the myths. "I am leaving tomorrow," Sarah told him. "I wanted to say goodbye." Talvin looked older but more peaceful. "I'm glad you came. I wanted to apologize properly. When you first arrived, I saw you as an enemy, a destroyer of my world, but you were trying to help, in your human way." "And I should have been more careful," Sarah replied, "more respectful of your culture." "Perhaps," Talvin said, "but perhaps my culture needed disrupting. We were built on lies and control. You exposed that. It was painful but necessary." He smiled slightly. "I have a new faith now, not in the eternal void, but in the capacity of people to choose their own paths. Some choose tradition, some choose innovation. Both can be sacred when chosen freely." On her last evening on the Velkari homeworld, Sarah stood on a hillside watching the sunset. The sky was painted in brilliant colors. Below, the crystal city glowed with lights. She thought about the journey. From a simple act of kindness to a civilization in crisis to a new way forward. She thought about all the people affected, those who died, those who suffered, those who found freedom. Was it worth it? Sarah still did not know. Perhaps there was no simple answer. Perhaps some questions had to remain open, uncomfortable, challenging. What she knew was this: truth was powerful, choice was sacred, change was inevitable, and managing all three required more wisdom and humility than any one person possessed. It required communities working together, learning from mistakes, building something better. Ziara joined her on the hillside. Together they watched the city lights. "Thank you," the young Velkari said quietly, "not just for the visor, but for giving us the chance to decide who we want to be." Sarah smiled. "You decided that yourselves. I just provided a tool. You had the courage to use it, even when it was hard." Years later, when Sarah visited other species facing similar transitions, she would tell them about the Velkari. She would share both the mistakes and the successes. She would emphasize that change was possible, but only when approached with respect, patience, and a willingness to learn. The Velkari story became a teaching tool. Not a perfect example, but an honest one. It showed that progress and tradition could coexist, that belief and truth were not enemies when people chose their beliefs freely, that even devastating mistakes could be transformed into opportunities for growth. On the Velkari homeworld, life continued. Children grew up in a world where they could choose their path. Some became priests, keeping alive traditions that mattered to them. Others became scientists, pushing boundaries. Most lived somewhere in between, taking pieces from old and new to create their own unique lives. Museums displayed the original visor Sarah had made for Ziara. School children visited it on field trips. Teachers explained what happened, both good and bad. The visor became a symbol, not of technology or progress, but of choice, the most human gift one could give. In the end, that was what humans did best. Not imposing their ways on others, but showing that other ways were possible, offering tools, offering knowledge, offering choices, and then stepping back to let others decide their own destiny. Sarah Chen would spend the rest of her life helping species navigate the space between tradition and change. She would make more mistakes. She would have more successes, but she would always carry the lesson the Velkari taught her.